Hello and welcome to Tolt Studio. I'm Kimberly Agbayani, the operations manager for Tolt Yarn and Wool. Tolt Studio is an education space, a space where we can connect with you every month with special guests, teachers, designers, creators, and community voices to further the enrichment of your craft and yourself. This evening, we welcome Clara Parkes, a champion of wool and New York Times bestselling author. Tolt Studio was actually born after a post by Clara last July about how once one understands the fundamental qualities of wool and yarn, substituting yarns in a pattern becomes easy and everything is much more accessible. And we thought, wouldn't it be amazing if Clara Parkes could talk to our community? And well, here we are, dream come true. We have an evening with Clara. So I'm gonna put her in the Welcome, Clara.
Hello. This is so cool to see, to watch you all come in. Okay, are we good? Yeah, we're good. She's muted. Okay. Yeah, okay. I still see you as the big speaker person. I don't know. Right before we started, I had to ask, like, wait, am I also supposed to see speaker view? Is that what I'm like? Oh, wait, right. I'm the speaker. So anyway, hello, all you lovely people. It is so great to see you here tonight. Look at like 399 wool heads. Oh, this is so exciting. So what I thought we would do is take a little walk through the world of wool as shown through, I picked 6 kind of archetypal yarns. So we're going to walk through the world of wool. Like it's a very, very vast subject. Books could be written about wool. But I just wanted to give you kind of a high level idea of when you start looking into the world of wool, like what your touch points are. And then we get really, really geeky at the end and we start blending, like playing in the kitchen. So the fine people at Tolt, I want to thank them so much for winding all those little snippets of yarn. I know many of you, but not all of you. Hopefully, those of you who did order the swatch packs, you have your little swatches with you. And for those of you who were not able to get the swatch packs for whatever reason, don't worry, because I've put together a PowerPoint presentation in the background that's going to be like your scratch and sniff for everything that we're talking about. So with that, I am going to start sharing my screen. This is very exciting, a little rusty here in Maine. And ta-da, there we are. Everybody can see it. So these are the 6 yarns that I picked to walk you through kind of the realm of wool in hand knitting in a very, very easy way. To start to give you a sense, we start with a super duper fine, and then we go through all the different kind of variations from Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, and then we end up in Iceland because this is Icelandic Wool Month, right? So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and just kind of, let's see, can I do this? There we go. So the biggest difference when we talk about wool, and this is something I'm going to mention again and again, it's the staple. That's the length of fiber as it comes off the sheet. Now, I pilfered this picture from my book, The Knitter's Book of Wool. That was taken at my kitchen table at about 11:30 at night. But just to show you that in the world of wool, your variables are going to be the length of the fiber, the crimp pattern, the curl pattern, sometimes it's called the curvature pattern, and then length, curvature, and diameter. And the fiber diameter, that seems to be the one that really gets people going the most, because that is what impacts what we feel as prickle. Now you notice I did not say itch. We do not use that word. That is a 4-letter word. That is sloppy shorthand. So I encourage you, as you start working with wool, and hopefully you already have, to start thinking of much more descriptive words to explain what it is that you're feeling. Because so often what you're feeling is a prickle sensation, but not necessarily. It could be glassy, it could be crisp, it could be brisk. Sometimes it's languid, sometimes it's crunchy, sometimes it's grumpy, sometimes it's petulant. Like, come up with better words, because it shuts the whole conversation down. And one of the coolest studies that's been done has shown that people's variation in terms of what their skin can handle before they feel a prickle, it's huge. So what for one person is going to be unbearable, for another person is completely fine, and they could sleep in it. So that's why it's really cool to be a knitter, because you can pick the yarn that you want that works for you, and you can go in whatever grade you want to go. The other cool reason to be a knitter is that so much of the world of wool, all these beautiful varieties that we've got in textures and heritages and colors, none of that comes into the commercial yarn market. Basically, you get like up to about 22 microns fineness. And after that, everything goes to carpet. So you never even see it. So like the more than half of what we're going to be looking at today wouldn't exist in the commercial world. So that's why it's so cool to be a knitter, because you get to tour the world. It's like yarn tourism, right? You can feel the terroir, you can feel the effects of the humidity and the altitude and the chalkiness of the soil and the alkalinity of the water. Just like all these factors come into play. But you want the swatches. You want the swatches. I totally understand. So I wanted to start at the super duper duper finest of finest of finest. Just like when you're tasting cheese, they say you should start with like the most delicate, like brie, and end with the most robust. So this one is Woolfolk Far. And what you're seeing is the finest and softest of what you're going to be able to get in hand knitting realm. So as you go finer, the fibers tend to get shorter. These are the types of animals. The diameter is much, much more narrow. And the crimp pattern, it collapses more easily because they're so fine. They don't resist compression as much. That's why you don't see very many super fine merino carpets out there. They would just kind of, so that's what makes this yarn really interesting, because it's a chainette construction, which adds more body to it. But really, I just wanted to give you a sense of like, okay, this is the super duper fine. This is for the people who are like, I don't like wool at all. It's itchy. Ah, I didn't even say those words. You start with something like this, and oops, it knits up. These are, it's kind of hard with this color, but I would love to see your swatches somehow later, maybe on social media, on Instagram, if we can do it. These were just super basic because I wanted to get a feel of the fibers running through my fingers. And after I washed it, there was some filling out, but not a great deal. Everything in here is going to be, what are we talking about with this? Within the grade of cashmere. So when you see a yarn that's marked super fine merino, like that's 17.5 microns. In cashmere, how high can that go? Up to 19. So this is like super duper soft, super fine, super delicate. You will face pilling, because the softer and finer the yarn is, no matter how well it's constructed, it's going to come loose sooner because the fibers are shorter and more delicate. And so every time they face abrasion, there are more ends sticking out that are going to reach out and meet one another and form pills. So that's another reason to branch out and try other fibers, because somebody even today was complaining about pills. Like, this is the reason why to branch out. So anyway, we started with the super duper fine, like ultra triple sifted cake flour. And now we're going to something, this is fun. So this is Farmer's Daughter Pishkin, and it's 100% Rambouillet, which is also within the category of fine wools. That's what we're looking at right now. And what's fun about Rambouillet which is everything in the fine wool category is somehow related to merino. Merino got around. That's all I'm going to say. So Rambouillet is like le French cousin of the Spanish merino. And the crimp in Rambouillet, the curl pattern, the zigzags, which can be like 11, 12, 20 little zigzags per inch, it's extraordinary and it's kind of chaotic. And so it's a hard fiber to spin, which means that when you knit it up, you can get a slight kind of a wobbliness that is fantastic. That makes it unique. That makes it a really cool texture. For me, I just love that. That means that there's liveliness in what I'm wearing. This extraordinary crimp situation going on with Rambouillet. Yeah, and the more crimp that you have going on, those of you who've taken any kind of yarn class, you know that that means more air is in your fabric, and warmth and insulating qualities are a factor of how much still air is trapped in your fabric. So Farmer's Daughter, 100% Rambouillet from Montana and Wyoming. So we're still in the fine category, but now we're kind of marching over into where that is after it was washed. This is before, oops, and after. Sorry about the exposure there. Not too much of a bloom. I thought there would be more. Nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever. So a lot of sheep are bred both for meat and for wool. There's a saying that meat drives the market. And unless you're breeding like super duper fine heritage, like ultra the merino that they play opera music to and that they sell to the Italian mills, selling some of your lambs to the meat market is just part of what goes on. So there's this whole category that they call dual purpose sheep. And they basically, usually they would breed a fine wool sheep with a sheep that has a bigger body, you know, so it has a bigger carcass, sorry. So when you get into the medium realm, this is where things get fun. The next yarn that we're looking at is Corydale. No, we're not. Oh, right, we're going in between. Okay, this is half and half. That's right. I wanted to drip you guys in really, really slowly. So yes, where did I put that? Oh, wait, I just wrote her down. So Kelborn Woolens, Germantown. This is a good example of what you might get if you go for like a good, well-made wool yarn. You know what I mean? Like W, not breed specific. It's made from a collection of different breeds from the American West. A lot of times, if you're making yarn and you want to buy the fiber, there are very few farms that raise enough of any specific type of sheep for you to be able to go breed specific and farm specific. So a lot of what happens especially in the West, is that the ranchers will sell to a wool pool, which will collect all the wool. They'll sort it by fineness, staple length, strength, the color as well, like some of it's a brighter white or if it's a yolkier color. And then the broker sells it to somebody else. So you can know the state, but it could be a collection of a whole bunch of different sheep. And that's what's going on here. I don't know what I did with my notes about her. That's what's going on here. They sometimes refer to it as territory wool because it comes from the West in the regions when they were a territory. It got started calling that name. It was in the 1800s. And it basically refers to, what do we have? It'll be like Rambouillet, Targhee, Columbia. Like in the West, they like sheep that are taller and have longer legs because it can be a lot of grassland and scrub. And so the wool stays cleaner. So that's what this is. This is some territory wool. And it's got mostly fine wool in there, but she blended it with the beginnings of medium wool. She blended it with Columbia and Polypay, which is another, there are so many Franken sheep out there, so don't get caught up in like the names of these breeds. But basically this is a half and half between the fine, posh, oh la la, fine wool category and like the rugged, sturdy, medium wools. If you ever hear, you know, people talk about Peruvian Highland wool, that's another medium wool. So this is a great, it has a longer staple length. It's gonna wear really well. I knit up a little swatch here. It has a lot of energy to it. Olive wool has great energy. How many of your swatches did this? Anyone? Bueller? Anyway, after you wash it, just completely relaxes. I really like this yarn. This is like a number 2 pencil kind of a yarn. And I just wanted you to swatch it to get a sense of what's actually in the sausage, if it has that kind of a name to it. And it's kind of this cool American West heritage going on. So then now we go to Magpie. Now we are squarely in this mid-range where from a what do you want to say? From a staple, a length perspective, we're getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And as the fiber gets longer, the yarn doesn't need as much twist to hold everything in place. So you can start to see, this one is still pretty bouncy, but you can start to see stuff relax a little bit. So if you're shopping for yarn and you see something that's really loosely plied, check and see what's in it. And if it's a long wool, if it's a medium or something that has a good long staple, you're fine. If it's like cashmere, be very careful. That's all I'm gonna say. So this one is Corydale, which is, or at least it used to be, the second most numerous sheep in the world, a definite hardy dual purpose. A lot of times if you get lamb in the market, it could very well be Corydale. Thoughts and prayers for the poor animals. So this one, how they got it was the breed was developed was by crossing Lincoln long wool with merino. So there's a lot of crossbreeding that goes on. And really what's happening the majority of the time is just a farmer is playing matchmaker in the field. It's not like people in lab coats, you know, and some creepy scientific, like, no, it's just someone controlling the dating app and saying, okay, you guys get to go and have fun. So I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate me describing it that way, but I'm going to describe it that way anyway. So, so we talked about fine. We've been touching with like the super delicate kind of stuff. And then the medium, we've been getting a little bit coarser. Coarse, I didn't say itchy, remember? The fiber diameter on this is somewhere around 25 to 31 microns. And this is where you get to learn about something called prickle factor. And I don't want to put you to sleep, but something really interesting that I learned not too long ago. I was on a call with some people in England. By the way, March 19th is International Sleep Day. Just thought I'd share that with you. So I was talking with a wool mattress maker, and his theory about where wool got this reputation for being itchy and scratchy is in the 1950s, when synthetic fibers were really, really coming in and taking over. To stay competitive, a lot of manufacturers had to go for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper grades of wool. And so it was to stay price competitive that they inadvertently degraded the reputation of wool. But what's really interesting is it's all about the fiber diameter, the texture that you feel. So sometimes when people think wool is itchy or abrasive, like it's got, you know, barbed wire, it's not that. It's the diameter of a fiber. At what point does it not yield when it touches your skin? At what point does it not yield when it touches your sensory receptors? And this could be acrylic too. This could be any other fiber. And they figured out, because they're desperate to get people using wool again, so they did a whole bunch of studies. Wouldn't that be a great study to be a part of? Just like a month of touching wool. Wouldn't that just be so terrible? And they determined that the mean range is around 21 microns. And here's the funny part. It was sponsored by the Merino people. And guess what? Merino falls within the 21 micron range. So yay. But there's this other, the number. You're dealing with living animals. And so they don't grow uniform fibers from head to tail necessarily. So even in this prickle calculation, they allow for no more than 5% of what's in there to be over 30 microns. At that point, you might feel a prickle. And there are all these other geeky terms that I would totally put you to sleep, like the standard deviation and the coefficient of variation. But basically, they're working really hard on trying to figure out the science of what is irritation. And it's all about what is next to your skin. And that's why wool base layers are so fantastic, because then you can wear anything on your body. Anyway, I'm talking too much. But so Magpie nest, this is Corydale. You can also, I don't know if you can see, as the fibers get longer, you move into this long wool category, you start to, sometimes you get a little bit of a sheen on the fiber's surface. This is also a fun one. This is a true marled yarn, which is one where each ply is a different color. So that's kind of a cool thing. So we are Magpie nest. What else did anything else? No. Okay. Now this is where we get fun. Okay, I don't know if anybody from Tolt recognizes what this could possibly be. Here we're going to talk about two different breed categories that actually both pretty much originated in the UK. So we've got the long wools, which I like to call them kind of the cheese, which is not very good, but the Romney and the Border Leicester and the Blueface Leicester and the Wensleydale. But they all share certain characteristics. They're much longer. The crimp is more open, which means there's less pushing the fibers apart. So they tend to be denser. So it's fantastic for woven goods. Like if you spun, I don't know, some Blueface Leicester, for example, really tight, and you wove with it, whatever you wove, that fabric would last forever. It would last like steel. But when you're knitting with it, sometimes we miss a little bit of that bounce. So hold that thought. The yarn that we're looking at is Tolt's own custom blend. This is like they're making their own wine. And it's a blend of Blueface Leicester and what is it?
Clune Forest.
Clune Forest. Yes. Where did I? It's the two categories got together. Anyway, Clune Forest, which is another category called the down or down type breeds. And all you need to remember about them, you won't see them very often in yarn. Poof. They are so much fun. They are poofy, poofy, poofy. I love them. I have a pillow and it's stuffed with some of the, it's just like, it has the best compression resistance. And I kind of liken it to, or I have likened it to, like when you add iceberg lettuce to a burrito, like it's a cool, good thing. So this yarn is a blend of Blueface Leicester, which is the finest of the long wools. Long wools can get pretty rough. They can get to over like 30, high 30s from microns, which is totally carpet variety. But Blueface Leicester is the finest of that grade. But then the Clune Forest is a down braid. So I saw this and I said to myself, okay, it has a loose ply. That's okay because it has a long staple. But I have the feeling that this would like it if I sang a little song to it. So I did what any red-blooded wool lover would do, and I took the little end at the bottom and I dangled it over my tea kettle. which I urge you, well, be safe. There we go. That's my disclaimer. But it's a really fun thing to do with any wool because wool loves to respond to heat and moisture. And sometimes you see something like this, and I just thought, I want to try to wake that up a little bit. And I could watch it starting to move. It's like your yarn has become this monster. It's alive. So anyway, that's a total digression. So I knit with this. So another thing, when they were describing this, I can't remember what you said exactly. It was a hardworking yarn. Maybe you describe it as that.
Yes, definitely. It's
yeah.
I love Snoqualmie Valley yarn so much. It wears beautifully, and it's, to me, quite comfortable against the skin while being so strong.
Yes. See, that's okay. So this is why it's so cool to branch out beyond the fine wools. You don't need to wear this as a nightgown. Like, it's gonna wear like steel. And sometimes in the descriptions, if it says it's a hardworking yarn, is that like the real estate ads where they say this charming studio apartment, and that means it's 4 square feet. But as I was knitting this, all I knew already is that when I washed it, it would do that. Can you see the difference? And how many of you swatched this and noticed that for yourself? It became from a collection of kind of random stitches, washing it in warm soapy water. Oh, it's like baking bread dough. So absolutely delicious. So anyway, so let's just pause for a moment and admire that absolutely beautiful bloom that you've got going on there. So that's why it's helpful to branch out. And I love Tolt. You were one of the first, Tolt, you do have a name, but the store, one of the first that I remember to really look at local farms and try sourcing the fiber and spinning the yarn yourself.
Yeah, and this is from our valley. Like
it's so local. I mean, you can wear, like, especially now when we're not traveling very much, like you can travel to visit them and wear this on your body. You can travel around the world through wool tourism or yarn tourism, and you can knit valleys and mountains and highlands and lowlands, and you can wear it and experience it on your body without ever leaving home. It's just, it's endlessly fascinating. Anyway, sorry. Get me talking about wool. So from here, it is Icelandic Wool Week. Yay! Is somebody happy about that? So yeah, this is the funnest category. And again, unless you're buying Icelandic sweaters in a store in Reykjavik, and check to see, because a lot of them are being knit in China now for the hand knitters, but you will not find this in any ready-made garment store besides an Icelandic clothing store, the collectives. So what you're looking at is basically fibers from pre-Bronze Age sheep. They have not been really messed with since then. And that is the coolest thing about all of these. They're called dual coated because they have multiple types of fibers all jumbled in there, or primitive breeds. The Icelandic sheep was brought to Iceland by Viking settlers in 1200 years ago. And it's like a time capsule to then, which is so incredibly cool. Until maybe, I want to say 100 years ago, before we automated the process of spinning and weaving, it was all done by hand. And a lot of it, I mean, obviously you had Paris and you had all that, but a lot of it was very, very local. And at the time you had a lot of sheep, especially in the UK, their coats had multiple types of fibers in there. Like Shetland, if you really know how to sort a fleece, I've seen Judith McKenzie, I've seen her pull out 5 distinct fiber types out of one clump of Shetland wool, one lock of wool, 5 lengths and finenesses and crimp characteristics and colors. They're like the ultimate convenience store. And because everything was done by hand, you had people who had the time and the patience and the motivation to sort by hand, to pick out and categorize, so that you had some of the fibers were like 18 microns, 19, 20 microns, these rugged little shape. They still had this super soft undercoat to stay warm in the winter. And you could knit underwear out of that. And then they picked the rougher and the rougher and the rougher grades until they had the grade that they would make sails out of. And the Viking sails were made from hand spun, wasn't exactly hand knit, but like they were handmade of hand spun yarn. And they were so prized, so valuable, that they were stored in the church. Like, wool really meant something back then. So Icelandic yarn is a great way to kind of play with that bit of history, that bit of legacy. So if you look very closely, you can kind of see that there's some darker hairs that are sticking out. I'm not going to say hair, that's not very good, but the Shetland fleece has 2 different types of fibers in it. And I do not speak Icelandic, and I'm not even going to try, but there's fell and tog. And I know it's probably like fei and tog, but I'll just say fell and tog. That's really fell and tog. So in a lot of the other primitive breeds, they try to pull those out. Like even in cashmere dual coats, they try to pull out the rough stuff. But Icelandic wool, those 2 fibers actually go together to create this amazing ecosystem in which the tog, which is the firmer, longer, stronger fibers, they sort of act like what do you want to say, like steel bars in construction to hold open space and to add the strength and the durability and the structure. And then the thell is like the blown in insulation. It's shorter and it can be really fine. It can be like 19, 20 microns. It kind of tiptoes around through all the cracks and fills in the spaces. And so when you knit it up, everything comes together into this fabric that is like, I know, I wish I could see all of you, because I bet a bunch of you are nodding right now. It's bulletproof, it's indestructible. And oh, right. No, I didn't think of it in time. Over there, I'm not going to leave the frame though. I have one of my grandma's Icelandic sweaters. This is what brought me to wool. This is probably the first kind of wool that I ever touched. Like she would have been wearing the sweaters when she held me. So like this fiber has great meaning to me. It also has energy to it. How many of your swatches did this? So again, that just means you've got so much life in your fabric. It's going to be the best garment you've ever had. It will wear like steel. She wore hers for 40 years and kept like having to darn the edges where she just kept fiddling with it. They're indestructible. And then when you wash it, see how everything comes together and creates this fabric. You're no longer that lumpy collection of stitches. You are this beautiful piece of wool fabric. And the fun thing with Icelandic wool, and actually we're starting to see it from some other people too, is that you can get it straight off the carding machine. Words are hard. Before any twist has been applied, and you can kind of make your own yarn. You can hold 1 strand, you can hold 2 strands or 3 strands together, or you can blend 2 different colors. It's like, so you can make it as dense or as fine as you want to within that range. Probably the other most popular dual coated primitive breed would be Shetland. And I know Tolt also has. You happen to have a great variety of Shetland yarn. And that one, that again, if you were spinning it by hand, you would be able to separate out some of the roughest, and it could be as fine as merino. Who would want that when you could have some of the longer fibers in there and have something that will last 50, 60, 80 years? Like, and maybe there's a little roughness to it, but that's why you wear some of these beautiful merino shirts that are coming from all over the United States and abroad. So anyway, that's my my love letter to dual coated and primitive breeds. Yeah, they haven't been messed with yet. The rest of what we see, all of the merino variants and even the medium ones, they've been bred to kind of produce as even a material as they can, sort of like monoculture. They want the field that's on the sheep's body to produce as consistent an ear of corn from head to tail. So in doing that, they've bred out the genetics for color. They've bred out the genetics for different textures to grow in the same fleece. And they've bred out the genetics for the sheep to naturally shed once a year. And it's been like 100, 110 years that this has been slowly, steadily going on, so that they could control when the harvest took place, basically. So that is why sheep now need to be shorn at least once a year. And I know you all know that. If you're here, you already know that. But Shetland sheep, not necessarily. At the right time of the year, if you catch them, you can just start plucking the wool straight off of them.
When I had Icelandic sheep, they shed. Yeah, they rued. Like it pulled off. Yeah.
I wonder, probably not, because I know it's ROO. I was gonna say, if like you'll rue the day, if that expression comes from, as opposed to like a roux. Yeah, you'll butter and flour sauce the day. No, I like it. You'll rue the day. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I would. This is just sort of like all over the place. It's hard because you're talking about 7,000 years of human history on this planet, and like every culture, everywhere you go, pretty much, except for some Southeast Asian countries, like you have a sheep and wool history somehow, somewhere. You could spend your whole life studying the different sheep. There are sheep in the Caribbean that came from Spain, like all of human history on this earth, all of geopolitical history can be told through sheep. And we get to wear their coats. We get to work with their coats, which is just so lucky. So I am now going to leave you. I'm going to do it. I said, if I have my guts, I'll do it. I wanted to show you, I wonder if I can see you guys at all. Nah. I wanted to show you what I have been working on. And this is a screenshot of what's been going on in my life here in Maine over the last couple of months. And it's not ready yet. Yes, that is Jubilee in the middle. She is the little good luck charm. But this will be coming in the next maybe week and a half. And it's basically just continuing the exploration of wool, not just in yarn, but in vitamin D3, which comes from lanolin. I bet you didn't know that. Or, from compost to coffins. Like, wool is everywhere. Wool is in Volvo car seats. It's in BMW seats. Anyway. So that's what I'm doing. And you are the very first human beings outside of my house and a few friends to see this. So, ta-da! And with that, I will throw it out for questions or comments or anything that you would like to talk about.
Thank you, Clara. So if you put your questions over in the chat, I will facilitate getting those to Clara. So I was going to ask you, when you were talking about the unspun lopi, were you talking about like plutilopi?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
But what's cool is like you could take any yarn off the card. Like with wool and spun yarn, you could take pretty much anything at that state and make yarn out of it. It'll just be really, really delicate, But that means that when you wash it, it's gonna like it's like baked cake. It's gonna actually fuse together. So
Yeah. There were many requests saying that it was totally worth it to everybody to see Grandma's sweater.
uh, uh it would be worth it to see around. Okay. Let's see if I can do it in, oh, what are you gonna see behind me? You're gonna see, we'll do a little tour. That is the first thing I ever designed for Knitty, and it's a knitted do not disturb sign. So, okay.
Love it.
Where are you? We might be out of luck, you guys.
Oh, I
I'm gonna put it in. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a mess over there. So instead I'll give you, this is a picture of my grandma and my grandpa. And so she's the one who wore wool all the time and introduced me to the world of wool. Aren't they cute? Newlyweds. If my mom's watching, she's seeing her parents. So anyway.
I love it. Well, there are actually several questions. There's a question about how can we help the US wool industry? Will you be doing another yarn offering in Shetland fiber? I'm not sure what that's specifically. And there are a lot of thanks and that I of course love your books, but what other books or maybe documentaries can I get that would help me to learn more about wool? I'll let you start answering some of these things and then we'll go after that.
So the question about how you can support the American wool industry, that's a good one. And it's also how you can support like the global wool industry. I was kind of sad to find out that the craft wool market is a teeny tiny fraction of the global wool situation. And so through yarn alone, like we can't do as much as we could if we started shifting our consumption habits, if at all possible, to include more people who are working with wool. Finding people who are doing it completely in the US is getting trickier and trickier. Some of the people I loved who used to do it have started adding other fibers to it. But I feel like right now, any purchase of something that's made from wool, as long as you feel okay about the company, like that is helping the bottom line, because no company is going to go out on a limb and spend a lot more for a material unless they know a consumer market is going to be there and they're going to want it. And so just proving that the market is there. The other thing we can really, really do as knitters and crocheters and weavers and spinners and dyers is to wear our creations out into the world. And anytime anybody comments on them, well, of course, pandemic times, it's a little hard, but like you are an agent of wool. Like you have no idea how impactful each of us can be in individual conversations with people. Like that's a really beautiful sweater. Here, touch it. I know, not right now. Like bleach wipes. And don't put bleach on wool. Don't put bleach on wool. It will eat it alive. But just representing it in your circles is a huge, huge thing, because you never know how many of your people are gonna present it further, and it's gonna go further and further and further. So those would be my recommendations.
There was a request actually if we could stop screen sharing so we can see your face more.
Oh yeah, that's good, because I'm a little anxious about seeing that picture. So there we go. Hi. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to scroll back into the question.
Good. I was looking at that just like, so thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it.
What are your recommendations for sourcing wool fiber and yarn most ethically? Stay local?
I would say, and this is totally not, this is coming off as an infomercial for you guys, but for you guys being told, you people, human beings, just sourcing it as ethically as possible, just trying to find out as much as you can about the company or about where it came from. You know, like, and fortunately we have the internet now, so we can do our research. The more you can trace, they call it chain of custody. You're so cool. So the more you can trace the chain of custody from the sheep to the product, the more clearly you can see every single step along the way. And there are some, one thing to look out for if you're buying finished wool clothing is ZQ Merino. There are a bunch of different companies out there that are starting to work on this, but they're like adding their own standards for, you know, land management, animal husbandry management, environmental responsibility, humanitarian goodness. So in more in the clothes world, look for ZQ Merino. That's another one.
Okay. What are your thoughts on camellid fibers versus sheep and goats?
I hate them. No. So camellid fibers, that would be alpaca, llama, camel, vicuña, guanaco. They absolutely have an essential place in the fiber system, and you know, they have this long, rich, early history in South America in particular. I think the problem came, and some of you might remember this, like in the early 2000s, or maybe I don't even know what we call those, like 2006, 2008. Suddenly everything was made of alpaca instead of wool, when they're actually, they behave differently. So I feel like it just, as long as we know, like, study the characteristics of each fiber and use it to its best advantage. So like alpaca can have less bounce and more drape and more density. So blending it can help open it up and can give you good characteristics of this and add a little bit of that. Just more fiber awareness. They totally have a place in our ecosystem.
The question, does finer wool always pill, or is pilling more due to staple length?
Pilling, I think pilling, it's a, this is the, so it's really hard. We have our craving for soft means that a lot of manufacturers, they will deliver soft. So like the Allbirds merino sweaters, so soft, so soft. And day two, you are a pill farm. I don't know if any of you, yeah, that's what sweater shavers are for. Although I'm saving all my pills and I'm thinking like, maybe I can like spin it into a new sweater. So it's not just the length of the fiber, but the amount of twist that's given to the yarn. Yeah. And the more twist you add, the harder it feels. And so it's this dance of like, if they spun it well enough that it didn't pill, like this is merino, and it's not ever going to pill because it's been given sufficient twist. But in knitting yarn, it's a little trickier because it will feel a little harder.
Woolfolk actually made one that's really tightly spun called Tove and Tove DK, and it pills less. It's still incredibly soft, but it pills less. But it's because it's so tightly spun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there are a ton of questions. Someone asked for some more technical references about wool to nerd out on. That includes statistics, etc.
Oh, that includes statistics. Oh, statistics. I'll show you the book that's holding up my laptop right now. This is my current absolute favorite. It's about all fibers, not just wool. If you can find this book, it is so cool. It walks you, it's just like Textiles, the Whole Story by Beverly Gordon. She just walks you through like everything, like the human history of all fibers, like in religion, in cultural references, in language. Like the more you read, you're like, oh my God, it's all around us. So that's one that I would recommend you trying to find, especially because I found my copy. So now you can go try to find it. There.
I'm like many others who really wishes the Book of Wool was back in print. I've lodged my request with the publisher.
What? This? Is that the one that you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Even if I could just take the first part. Sorry if you contributed a pattern. It's just me being selfish. But, I can tell you today in the mail, the paperback version arrived. So, not to sound like a salesperson, I'm totally Vanna White over here, aren't I? Whoops. Anyway, okay.
Okay. So when you get a new to you wool, what do you start with doing? Like,
okay, I will use this skein because, of course, how many of you, well, you can't really do a show of hands, but like, I bet every single person watching this can look around and find a skein of yarn without getting up from your chair. Well, you can in particular. So when I get a new skein of yarn, you just engage all the senses. First you read, well, including your eyes, you read the label, like what's going on, what's the fiber content. And so then you go through your little mental reference book of what you know about the texture and the staple length and the, fiber diameter, okay. But always it's your fingers that are going to tell you what's really, really going on. And the more yarn, it's like pilots have to have flight hours. They have to like log flight hours. I feel like we have to log yarn hours. Just like try everything you can get your hands on, because your hands are going to build up knowledge so that every time you pick up a new skein, it's going to pull out the file for when it felt this the last time, how it behaved. And it starts to guide your movements in terms of, you'll start to like, moss stitch. Ooh, no, cables. Like you'll see more. But yeah, read the label, touch. Of course, you have to smell and then pull a strand out and look at it and untwist it and just get down in there. See what's going on. That's what I do with a new skein of yarn.
Right.
That's all I can say publicly that I do with a new skein of yarn.
Well, there are so many questions. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm going to try my best to get through them, but we might not reach all of them. There is a question about superwash, and we had talked a little bit about superwash, but it's hard for me to tell. It says, would that include superwash wool, or is that an oxymoron? I'm not really sure what that was in reference to, but superwash has its place, and it's
yeah, if you want to support the domestic wool industry, then you got to be okay with the superwash process, because that saved the domestic wool industry. Like that allowed us to supply wool for the military, which is our largest customer. So it has its place, but you can choose. You don't have to pick it. You don't want it.
People are very excited about the Wool Channel and want to know how they can know how to follow. Like, what do they need to do?
I guess. Oh, I'm not good salesy. Oh, okay, I'm gonna pretend that I'm salesy. So if you go to Instagram, go to the Wool Channel. That's the account, the Wool Channel. Sign up. But I will let you know if you follow me on Instagram. If you go to claraparkes.com, I have a little super secret list there that I keep. I'll also be letting Knitters Review people know about it. I will drip the information, but I think probably on Instagram it will go out pretty soon. We should come up with a code word that I use. Like nobody else knows what it is. If I say penguin, the channel is live. How's that?
Yeah, there you go. We'll just watch.
Or I've lost my mind.
This is a fun one. What is a fun fact that you never get the chance to share?
About wool?
I suppose, or maybe in general.
Yeah. I'm super excited about the vitamin D thing. And I saw somebody wrote, vitamin D, yeah! Yes. If you take vitamin D3, the commercial, like industrial way, the vast majority, there's a teeny tiny bit that's like vegan friendly vitamin D3 that's made from fungi, but it's from lanolin that's extracted from sheep's wool, that's purified, that's exposed to, it's like irradiated and this and that and this and that until it becomes this substance called cholecalciferol. And that's super rich in vitamin D3. And that, if you get pills, if you get it put in a bottle, so you're like imbibing all the goodness of wool inside your body without even wearing it. Oh, if you have a wool allergy, you could still take vitamin D3 on the inside and you wouldn't have any problems. I'm just saying. Anyway, that's the factoid that I just think is so cool.
It's really cool. This may end up being our last question, but people want to know if you're going to make more yarn.
I'm taking a little break right now. I do have, I have 2 bales sitting in Texas. So that's what's going on. But and then the pandemic, and but I appreciate that you're asking. Yeah. For now, you can go to places like Tolt Yarn and Wool and secure your breed specific yarns there. How's that?
Yes, we do seek them out.
You do a great job. That's like where I go when I'm trying to figure out a reference for something. Like, well, let's see what Tolt has. So you do a good job.
Thank you. Oh, we're coming to the close of our talk. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a tremendous pleasure. And over in the comments, many people are saying how thrilled they are to spend this evening with you and how much they love everything. Yes. And it's so fast, I can't even, people are delighted and thank you. And this is fantastic. And they love it.
Well, I'm sending giant hugs to everybody. I was trying not to not look, but yay, big hug to all the words over there.
Yes, so thank you. And thank you everyone who's joined us. This is for our community. It's for you. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, Clara.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clara.
Bye. You're welcome.
Thanks, Clara. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're the
Bye,
best,
thank
Clara.
you. Was great.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Thanks, Clara. Thanks, Tolt. Appreciate it.